Hello, and welcome to this T-Level Tactics video for Root Core 2 Culture of the T-Level Digital Support Services course. And in this video, we're going to be focusing on communications. So in this video, we'll explain the changes in communication methods with digital technologies. We'll analyze the impact of digital communications on society. And we'll also evaluate the moral and ethical implications of digital communications. Before we get started, these videos are not endorsed or sponsored by any education institution or qualification awarding body. And T-Level Tactics videos should not be used as a replacement to any classroom learning, as discussion and practical activities with peers and your lecturer will help to expand your thinking and comprehension. Instead, these materials are best used as preparation material or revision to reinforce learning. And these videos also cover the same content and knowledge for Root Core 2 of the T-Level Digital Business Services course. However, they will be more contextualized towards IT support roles. Let's take a look at communications then. Do you think you could go a whole week without doing any of the following? Looking at a smartphone, any smartphone, visiting a website, using social media, using messaging apps or services, watching video content, or listening to the radio, or a CD, or a music streaming service? That means no Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Reddit, Discord, Twitch, YouTube, Netflix, or Amazon services of any kind. Do you think you could do that? We're more connected to each other now than at any other point in human history. And most of these developments are relatively recent. Telegrams, came about in about 1816. Photography, 1826. The emergence of motion pictures in 1888. The first radio broadcast was in 1906. And television came not too long after, in 1926. Now that seems like old tech, but if you look at how long humans have been on the Earth and how long we've had society, it is all very recent stuff. Of course, things started changing faster with the start of the digital age. In 1960, computer messaging first came along. 1983, emails. The first instant messenger appeared with IRC in 1988. The World Wide Web in 1989. SMS messages or text messages in 1992. The very first video stream over a network was in 1993. The first social media site came about in 1997, before Facebook, before MySpace, before any of the others. I'll let you find it out. The first smartphone, or what we called a smartphone at the time, came about in 2000, for the first time combining a lot of these other features together in a portable device. And communications have had a significant transformation over the past few decades, primarily driven by advancements in digital technology. The shift from traditional to digital communication methods has reshaped how we interact, share information, and build relationships with each other. Now, we still use traditional communication methods like talking to each other or writing, but the majority of our daily communications are electronic, using emails, social media, instant messaging, and video conferencing. And not only are these methods instant, they can be used to communicate around the world. If you were to think about how you communicate every day, what percentage of each of the following do you think you use? Verbal communication, written, i.e. pen and paper or books, electronic messages like social media and instant messaging, video, and audio. Which of those do you think is your primary method of communication now? Now, if you're a Patreon member, you can head over to patreon.com/T-Level Tactics and download the task sheet that goes with this video. If you're not a Patreon member, well, head over there anyway, so you can have a look at all the exclusive content that's available for our members. Download the task sheet and have a go at the first task. It's a short task, it'll take you about 20 minutes. So pause the video here, have a go, then come back when you're ready to move on to part 2. So what's the impact been? Well, we know that digital technologies have had an impact on society. But how specifically have digital communications changed us? Well, some of the positive things: we've got increased connectivity with each other and around the world. We've mentioned this already. We've got immediate access to information, things like news and education resources. In terms of news, we've got real-time news and information updating, meaning we can get it instantly as it's happening. Rapid dissemination of news and information, keeping all of society informed about current events. There's also more equality and equal opportunity to communicate for marginalised voices and for social movements. With advances in communication technologies, we've seen remote working opportunities and also an increase in online digital communities on platforms like Reddit and Discord, allowing individuals to share interests with each other and to connect over the internet. But there are some negatives that have come with it. There's information overload a lot of the time, too many communications in a short space of time. Think of some of the apps that you might have installed that you've got notifications on. You might have Snapchat and WhatsApp and Messenger and Instagram, all people trying to communicate with you over different platforms. There's also the rise of misinformation. It's extremely easy to create information that really doesn't mean anything and misleads people. It's very little time to be able to tell what out of this information is true and what is false. We've also seen a rise in social isolation, as reduced face-to-face interactions can lead to increased feelings of loneliness, particularly if you're remote working. There's also cyberbullying and harassment to consider. As it's much easier to make and send communications, and do so anonymously, it can make it a lot easier for people to make negative interactions that can go unpunished. There's also been an impact on relationships, and the rise of something called phubbing, which is looking at a phone instead of talking with people. Perhaps you're out at a restaurant having dinner with family, perhaps you're at home watching television with someone, and instead you're paying more attention to the phone rather than having a good time with them. So, for Patreon members, it's time to do a bit of self-reflection, and that's what task 2 is all about. So head back to that task sheet and have a go at this second task. Spend about 30 minutes on it, and it's really just reflecting upon yourself and how you use communications and technology. Pause the video here and have a go, then come back when you're ready to move on to part 3. Let's have a look at the moral and ethical impact of some of these changes then. Digital communications have transformed how we interact, but they also raise significant moral and ethical questions. And understanding these implications is crucial for fostering responsible use of technology and protecting individual rights. Now, in the last video, we looked briefly at data collection and surveillance technologies. But what other concerns are there? We've already mentioned misinformation and disinformation, but why is this an issue? Digital platforms can rapidly disseminate misinformation, impacting public opinion and behaviour. And it's the ethical responsibility of tech companies to monitor and address the spread of false information. Targeted advertising and algorithm-driven content can manipulate user behaviour and influence democratic processes. And if you want to see where this has been of a particular concern, search for something called Cambridge Analytica and its impact on the US elections. We can look at something called the digital divide, which is where there's disparities in access to technology and the internet. This is essentially between people who perhaps have a lower income, or perhaps they're a vulnerable or marginalized group that may not have as much access to technology and communications as others. We have an ethical obligation to ensure equitable access to digital communication tools for everyone, regardless of socio-economic status. And lack of access or digital literacy can further marginalize vulnerable populations. Addressing these inequalities is essential for promoting social justice and inclusion. Another one we've mentioned is cyberbullying. Digital communications can facilitate cyberbullying, leading to severe emotional and psychological consequences for victims. It's the ethical responsibility of both individuals and platforms to create safe online environments. And there are ongoing debates about who is accountable for online harassment and the exact role platforms have to play in this and in enforcing community standards. There's a clear need for clear policies and consequences for harmful behaviour online, and more development on how to enforce them. Surrounding copyright, the ease of sharing digital content raises ethical questions about copyright infringement and intellectual property rights. Balancing the rights of creators with the public's access to information is a complex ethical challenge. Fair use allows people to use copyrighted content without permission in specific circumstances. But there's a fine line when it comes to then using that content in a monetized fashion online. So, for Patreon members, Task 3 expands upon this evaluation aspect. So return to the task sheet and have a go at that third task. Again, the third task is always a little bit longer, so spend about 30 to 45 minutes on this. Pause the video, have a go, then come back where we'll wrap things up and finish things off with an exam question. So in this video, we've explained changes in communication methods with digital technologies, we've analysed the impact of digital communications on society, and we've evaluated the moral and ethical implications of digital communications. Let's try an exam-style question. Outline 2 positive and 2 negative aspects of digital communication platforms. There are 4 marks available. And that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll be looking at digital psychology and mental health. So make sure you're subscribed at youtube.com/@tleveltactics. And if you haven't taken a look at the Patreon yet, head over to patreon.com/tleveltactics to see all the exclusive content over there and get access to our podcast editions as well. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.